In this video, we're going to go through on the Methodist Girls School Primary for Mathematics with Assessment 3 2024. So let's get started. Right, so in the first question over here, we want to convert 9 tenths, 4 tenths, and 7 thousandths. So 9 tenths over here, pretty straightforward. Basically, 9 tenths over here will be 90, and then we got a plus. Okay, so common mistake that I see my students do is that 4 tenths, they might be thinking that 4 tenths should be 0.04. But the thing is that 4 tenths is not 0.04, it's actually 0.4. Okay, so in this case, if I were to say 4 over here, it is actually in the tenths place. If I put to 0.04, this should be in the, you guessed it, hundredth place. So now we know that this 4 tenths should be 0.4. Okay. And lastly, you have, in this case over here, the 7 thousandths. So I think you know already, right? 0.007. Okay. Because in this case over here, 7 is in the thousand place. This 0 beside the 7 is in the hundredth place, and the 0 here is a 10th place, like we've mentioned here before. So now if I were to go and look back over here, right? So this will be plus 0.007. And this is equal to, in this case, will be 90.0, no, 90.407. And the answer to this question is number 4. So I'm just going to put a rectangle here to say this is the answer. All right, let's move on to question 2. Okay, in this case, which of the following statement is correct? QP is parallel to PT. Let's see if this is correct. Okay, so QP, right? QP is parallel to PT. Okay, so if I were to draw this out, the red line over here, QP is parallel to PT in this case. Sadly, they are not parallel at all. So in this case, QP and PT is wrong. Let's move on to the next one. QT and RS. Okay, let's see over here. So QT, right, and RS, are they parallel? So if you use your rulers, you can actually drag them, right? So if I were to drag them, sadly, they are not parallel at all. Okay, so in this case, this will also be wrong as well. Okay, next one. In this case, it says here QR. So if you don't know what this means, right? This means is perpendicular. Perpendicular. Okay, so two lines will basically meet each other to make it 90 degrees. Okay, so this is red, and I'm gonna make this small, perpendicular, right? So if you don't know what these two dashes, this means parallel. Parallel. Okay, in this case. Okay, so now QR, let's go to QR. Let's have a line. QR over here. Okay, is it perpendicular to RS? Okay, so how do you measure if something is perpendicular? So what I actually recommend is to use a ruler. Okay, so you can, rotate your ruler. I'm gonna make this ruler smaller. Let me zoom this in. All right, so once you have a ruler, then what you can do is you can drag this ruler and make sure that the 2 points that they meet are perpendicular. So any I would say rectangular or square object can actually help you. So in this case, you could see that they are perpendicular. Great. So QR and RS is actually correct. Okay. And let's try the other one just to confirm. So QT, in this case, QT, let's move here, QT and TS, right? QT and TS over here. Okay. So let's see if they are perpendicular to each other. So if I were to move this over here, okay, so using your ruler, using a digital ruler, which is a bit hard for me to, change, but I'll manage. And now if let's see if it's perpendicular. Not really, because the TS is not really perpendicular. So in this case, whoops, QT and TS are not perpendicular to each other. And the answer to this, in this case over here, is QR and RS. There you go. So make sure to have your ruler during your test. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, it's a lot. So May placed some bunches of balloons along the corridor as decorations for a school event. The bunches of balloon were placed at an equal distance from each other. So you can see over here, very good clue. The distance between the third and the fifth bunch of balloons is 3.4 meters. What was the distance between the first and the eighth bunch of balloons? So in this case, this is what we call a gaps and intervals concept. So gaps and intervals, right? Concept. Okay. So in this case, we want to know what is the distance between the one gap. So the gap distance, which we are referring to just one gap distance, right? So what I mean by this is, in this case, is just this thing over here. Okay. So what is this one gap distance? Oh, it should be a question mark, right? So I think pretty straightforward. The gap's distance, since 3 to 5th have 2, so we can have 3.4, and then we can divide it by 2, right? And this will equal to 1.7. So one gap distance is equal to 1.7. Okay, so I think it's pretty straightforward. So the next part is we want to know, let me have a highlighter over here. We want to know the first and the eighth bunch of balloons. All right. So if did not know how to get the gaps between 2 points, it's as pretty straightforward. So how we get two gaps in this case over here, right? Is basically in this case how to get two is we have number of gaps is equal to fifth minus 3 third. So that's why we got 2. That's why we have 3.4 divided by 2 to get 1.7 in this case over here. So now we know that this is the case. We just get the position to minus each other. So in this case, the number of gaps between 1 and 8 over here is basically the higher number minus the lower number. It is 7. And then the distance is basically 7. And we know the gap distance 1.7. So times 1.7. Right. And this will give us basically 7 plus I'm using like this, right? 7 plus 4.9. So 7 plus 4.9 is basically 7 times 1 plus 7 times 0.7, 4.9. And this will give you 11.9 meters. And that means the answer to this is 11.9 meters over here. All right, let's move on to the next question. Question 4. Express 4.720 as a decimal. Okay, so essentially what we need to do is we know that the number 4 is the whole number, so the answer is like 4, right? 4 point, but we don't know what's the decimal. Okay, so we want to convert this 720 into the decimal. So there's two ways to do this, right? The first way is to have 7 divided by 20. Nothing wrong with that. So you can do the workings, right? Okay, and then equal to. But the second way, which I always recommend, is to make the denominator to 100. So how we do that is basically, so I'm going to do the second way, which is basically to have 7 out of 20, right? So let's convert 7, 20, and put a line in the middle, right? So let's put 7 out of 20 into the denominator, in this case over here, to 100. So how we do that is we basically 20 times what to become 100 is times 5. Okay, and we also want the times 5 with the 7 over here. Okay, and this will equal to, so we know the denominator in this case is 100, right? So 20 over here, this is 100. But what about the numerator? 5 times 7 equal to 35. Okay, so that means 35 of 100, and this will convert to simplest form 35, 0.35 at the decimal. So since we have the 7 out of 20 as 0.35, we can just add it to our number 4, which is 0.35 in this case over here. Okay, so that's the answer. So we can add one more, right, which is 4 plus, so another step that we missed out, 0.35 is equal to 4.35. Okay, so that is how you get the answer. All right, let's move on to question 5. So question 5 says here, what is the decimal represented by A? Okay, so what we need to do is we need to count the number of spaces, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this means this is 5, 6, oops, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, pretty straightforward. So there are 10 points, right? And this is number 5. So this is the halfway point in this case over here. So what we can do is we can just count, or we can count backwards, 2.4 to 2.3. That means the decimal place for this should be 2.35, the middle one, right? This case over here. So what is A? So A over here should be, I think it's pretty straightforward. 2.35 is the middle, 2.36, 2.37, and 2.38. Okay, so in this case, the answer to this is 2.38. Okay, pretty straightforward. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, question 6. Round 43 or 43.26 to the nearest tenth. So common mistake is that thinking that 0.06 is the 10th place, right? Doesn't make sense as well, right? So you want to round to the nearest tenth, then it will be the same number. Most of the time, that's not usually the case. So 0.006, 0.06, sorry, is 100th place. Okay, right? So then what is the 10th place is 0.2, correct? Okay, and this is your 10th place. So in this case, number 2 over here, all right? So pretty straightforward. This 2 over here is 2 is not 5 or more. So basically, oh no, sorry, not 2. So we are not referring to 2. We want to see whether we can round 2 from the previous number, which is 6. Okay, so is 6 more than 5, right? So 6 is 5 or more. Okay, so that means we're gonna round up number 2. So I'm gonna have an arrow here to round up 2. In this case over here, okay, actually it's the other side, whoops. So we're gonna round up 2, which basically we want to add 1. Okay, and that means in this case this will become is equal to 43.3. That's it. So the answer over here should be 43.3. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So make sure you don't have this common mistake of saying 0.06 is the 10th place. So 0.2 is the 10th place. Right, next one. Measure and write down the size of angle Y. All right, so first thing is that we always want to extend the line, or the extended line that is not a straight line. You can actually extend both line as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the line. Okay, so from Y, I'm going to extend it like this, okay, to be as straight as possible, right? So always extend, make sure that it's the same over here. And then I have a protractor, right? A big ass protractor over here. Okay, and what I do is I'll just land it over here. Okay, so mistake that maybe some students do is that they read the wrong range or wrong number. So instead of 140 to 150, they read 40 and 30. So they think in the middle, right? 35, right? Which is wrong. So the answer is in the middle here, 140 and 145. If you were to read very closely, I mean, yeah lah. So you just 140 and then you count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So that means in this angle over here, this is an obtuse angle more than 90. So that means the answer should be more than 90. And the answer is 145 in this case over here. All right, very good. Let's move on to the next question. Question 8. Divide 16 by 7. Give your correct answer to 2 decimal place. Okay, so we can have our workings over here. So we will probably have 7. And then we're going to just put dash. And then I'm going to put a line here as well, right? Okay, and then I'm going to put text over here. It should be 16. Okay, so over here, what we can do is we can minus, what's the multiple that of 7 is closest to 16? 14, right? So how we get 14 is we multiply by 2. Okay, in this case. Whoops, why is it like that? Okay, so we will have 2 over here. Okay, all right, and then this is left with, so I'm going to put another line over here, right? And this will give us 2, right? So the thing is, we cannot have 7 minus 2, right? Because it will give us a negative number. So what we need to do is we need to put a dot. Okay, not really a dot per se, but we put a decimal place, dot 0. Okay, not this 0, but this 0, 2.0. Okay, so in this case we can take it as like 20. So in this case, what can we minus 20? That's multiple of 7. Okay, so it's very close to 14 as well. So that means what we can do is we have 2.2. Okay, and then we minus 20 minus 14, and this will give us, okay, in this case will be 6, right? We have 6, so 6 over here, zero point 0.6. Okay, just to have a good sense of where our decimal place is. Okay, zero point 0.6. So we cannot minus 7 again, because 6 minus 7 will be negative 1, so you have to put 60, right? So let's minus again what is closest to 60, right? So we can, don't put a point actually also lah, right? So 60 minus, right? What's closest to 60? There's multiple of 7. So if you say 63, close, should be 56, right? Those should be 56. So how we get 56 is basically 7 times 8. So I'm just going to double confirm, but yes, correct. So it's 2.28, all right? And then this will give us, in this case, 60 minus 56, which is 4, right? So in this case, it give us 4. And now with this, what is closest to 4? Should we continue or should we stop? So the thing is, it says here over here, 2 decimal place. That means we need to get our number from 2.28 to the last third decimal place, so that we can find the third decimal place to see whether we want to round up or round down the eighth over here in the 100th place. So we still need to find one more in this case. Okay, so what we need to do is make the 4 to 40, and then we minus, okay, what's closest to 40. Okay, let me move this whole working over here. All right, 40 closest 7 should be 35. So this is 2.285. Okay, and then we can stop over here, right? So technically we can continue, but yeah. So the answer to this, 16 divided by 7, so 16, right? And then we divide it by 7, equal to 2.285. My thing is, we want to have it in 2 decimal place. So what we need to do is to see whether we can round out or round down. So we go to the third decimal place, and since this third decimal place is 5 or more, then we need to round up to our 2 decimal place. So then this will then become 2.29, right? So that's the answer. So the answer to this is 2.29 in this case. All right, let's move on to the next question. Question 9. Arrange these numbers from the greatest to the smallest. Okay, so we have the fraction 2 out of 5, 0.403, decimals at 0.043. Okay, so the thing is that we don't know what this is in decimal place. So I think I mentioned before, the easiest to have this into a decimal place is to make it into the denominator of 100, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we have 2 out of 5, right? So what do we need to multiply the denominator to make it into 100? So we say times 20, you're right. So we times 20 and times 20 in the numerator as well. All right, and this is equal to, so we know that the denominator is 100, but what happens to the numerator? This will become 40 as well. Okay, so this, then 40 out of 100 will become 0.40. Okay, so now we know that these are 3 decimal place, right? So all this both is 3 decimal place, right? So usually what I like to do is I want to convert this everything into 3 decimal place. So that means the new numbers, okay, will be 0.400. Okay, let me do the workings of this over here. Okay, 0.40. Then this will be 0.403. And then this should be 0.043. Okay, so pretty straightforward. We know what's the biggest number, which is this one, 0.403. And then the middle is 0.400. And the last one is 0.043. But thing is that, uh, you know what's the mistake over here? We don't put the decimal because the original number over here is, or original thing over here is a decimal 2 out of 5. So instead of this over here, 0.400, we just put a 2 out of 5 over here. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this and put it over here, make it a little bit smaller, like this. Okay, so that's the answer. Okay, so for question 9. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Question 10. Draw and label PQRS in the square grid below. One side of the square has been drawn for you. So as you see over here, PS. Okay, PS, right? Okay, so how do you draw a square? So what you need to do is, in a way, for me, I like to do is to draw a, what do you call this? A triangle. Okay, not really a triangle, but we're gonna use a ruler over here. First thing first is we want to measure what's the length of this, what do you call this line over here. So if you can count, right, from S to P, it is 1 square, 2 square, and roughly around 3 square. Okay, so essentially it's around 3 square over here. Okay, so next thing is we wanna at the same time have the ruler over here. So let's grab our ruler. And then we're gonna place this. So make sure that the side of the ruler is actually parallel to this, like this. Okay, so this side of your ruler should be parallel to your PNS. That's what you see over here. Okay, so now the next thing is we're gonna place it like this. All right, and then we're gonna draw a line from here. So P, draw a line until you see the next square like this. Right, so it should join the next square, something like this. So let me move it like that, so it's more parallel to what you see over here. Okay, so why we need to draw the next square at the edge? Because this is where, in a way, this is also 3 lines, right? So 3 dimension of lines. All right, question 10. So draw and label square PQRS in the square grid below. One side of the square has been drawn for you. Okay, so we have one line over here, PS. So how do we draw the other line? So first thing is, this is what I usually like to do. So first thing is, you want to make this PS as a, I would say, what do you call this, a triangle, right? So over here, we're going to have a triangle. Okay, and over here we're gonna write down, in this case over here, this is 3 square long, right? So I'm gonna put here 3. Simple enough. Then the PS over here, this is actually 2 squares long. Okay, so that means, right, what we need to do is we have to put, we need to measure 2. So instead of 2 is 3. So we will do the opposite on the other side. Okay, 3 over here, and this, instead of 3, we will have 2. That's what you see over here. So in a way, we want to make it alternate, right? Like this, 2. So from this, okay, why we do this? Because we want to get the next point, right? The next point is actually diagonally over here. So how we do that is, since we know one side of this triangle is 3, that means this 2 beside it, it should be 3, and where it should land is 2, because it's the opposite sides. That's what you see over here. All right, so now if I were to draw a line from here, so the point that I need to draw to is this point over here. Okay, let me make it like this. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this over here like this. Okay, so now let's draw the other side. Okay, the other side is the same. So we have 3 over here. Okay, we have 3, so that means we will get 2 over here. So I'm going to uh, have to measure 2 squares like this. Okay, And then I'm going to measure 3 squares at the opposite side as well, like this. Okay, so that means our next point that I want to draw is over here. Okay, I'm gonna make this a little bit like this. All right, so now I can draw the next line over here. And since we have this two, lastly, we can just merge these 2 points as well to over here. That's what you see over here. Okay, so now if you want to measure whether everything is aligned, you can put a ruler to measure it lah. But most of the time, it should be okay. That's what you see over here. Okay, so sometimes my drawing is a bit sengit, but most of the time it looks something like this. Okay, so you can use this technique for you to draw a square that is like a bit more diagonal, but this is how it should look like. So yeah, that is so. The reason why we do this alternating is because if you were to measure this again, this is 3 and this is 2. So in a sense, when you draw, oops, this is 2, right? So in a sense, when you draw a what do you call this, a square that is a bit more diagonal, actually it's basically what do you call this, a square within a square. You can think of it like that, and this is how it looks like. So you have equal sides. That's what you see over here. Okay, so now I can remove all of this. Okay, last thing, if you draw like this, I don't think you will get, how much marks is this? Let me see. This is, I think it's 2 marks, right? Yeah, 2 marks. So you might get only 1 mark. The next thing that you need to do is you need to label it. Okay. So how do you label, right? So it says here is PQRS. Okay, it says here PQRS. So what this means is that what you need to do is P, and then the next point that you need to write is Q. So this should be Q. And then lastly is R. So this is R, okay, and S. So whenever we say PQRS, what this means is basically P, it must joins to the next letter. So P and then Q and then R and then S. Okay, so it should in a way outline the whole square when you say it into one single line. So this is how you do it lah. So PQRS. Okay, and there you go. That's the answer to number 10. All right, next question. Question 11. So in the figure shown below, ABCD is a rectangle. Find EAF. So which is this one, right? EAF. Okay. So we know that all corners of the rectangle is how many degrees? If you guessed it, it is 90 degrees. So this whole thing over here, wait, give me a, wait. Yeah, this is 90 degrees, right? 90 degrees. Okay. So in this case, pretty straightforward, I would say, right? This whole thing, let me give a line. This whole thing, this line over here, right, is all 90 degrees. This whole thing is 90 degrees. So pretty straightforward. What we can do is, so angle EAF, EAF over here, and we'll angle, right? So the angle, where is the angle? The angle, right? The angle EAF, right, is equal to, right, 90 minus 53 minus 11. Okay, so always double check your what do you call this, your workings. So for me, I would say 90 minus 53 minus 11 should be 90 minus 64. Okay, and this will give me 36 degrees in this case over here, right? So 36 degrees. Okay, so the answer to this is 36 degrees. Right, so I don't have to put degrees because they already put it for me. All right, so now, yep, that's the answer to this. Oh, sorry, 64 minus 90 is not 36, it's 26. See? Gotta double check again, huh? Right, always double check. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Question 12, right? Rectangle ABCD is made out of 5 identical rectangles. What is the length of E and F over here? Okay, what is this? All right, so we know all of these rectangles are the same. Then what we need to do is we need to see what are the different numbers inside this rectangle. So we see that there's 12 centimeters. But you do also see something else, right? If you guessed it, here this whole, I would say, length times breadth. So I would say this breadth, right? So this breadth over here contains 3 of this, right? 1, 2. I'm gonna have a different color, and 3. Oh, let me put it here. Okay, 3. So we have 3 of the length equal to 12 centimeters in this case over here, right? So that means, what does that mean, right? That means 3 of this breadth is equal to 1 length of this 12 centimeters, right? Because this E and F over here is also, let me duplicate this. It's also this thing. It's the same. It's the same. So I'm gonna put it as red. Then this one should be orange. Okay. So this whole thing, all right. This whole thing, 12 centimeters. Right. Let me see. Yep, 12 centimeters. We basically divide it all by 3. And then since one of the breadth is equal to one of this breadth, then we can get EF. Okay. So essentially, we can say that okay, one. Let me put this in black. Length times breadth. So one length is equal to 3 breadth. Okay. So since we know 3 breadth is equal to 12 centimeters, then one breadth is equal to 12 divided by, right? I get it. I got it. Divided by, okay, 3, okay, and equal to 4 centimeters. And E and F, or E and F, what is the length? Is equal to 4 centimeters. That's it. The answer here is 4 centimeters. Ta-da! There you go. Okay. So if you have practiced these kind of questions, you probably can get it. If not, then hopefully this gives you a better understanding on how to solve this kind of questions. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, question 13, right? So Megan receives a total of $30 of pocket money for 5 days. Rich! No. Okay, maybe not. I don't know. Okay, each day she spends $2.70 on transport, part the remaining money on food, and saves the rest. How much does Megan spend on transport in 5 days? Okay, pretty straightforward. So each day or one day transport is equal to dollars 2.70. Okay, so 5 days. Okay, so 5 days transport is equal to $2.70 times 5 equal to, not CX, right? I don't know what CX. Okay, 2.75 times 5 is equal to, this should be dollars 13.50. Okay, do not write in this space, right? So $2.75 equal to $13.50. Okay, so make sure you do your workings correctly. This should be the answer. Okay, so the answer here is dollars 13. Whoops. $13.50. Okay, now last week Megan saved $1.80. How much did she spend on food? Right? So this means she saved a total of $1.80 and she has a total of, in this case, $30. Okay, for 5 days. So what we need to do is, in this case, we want to minus the total, which is $30, right? Total for 5 days is $30. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so total is equal to $50, and then we know the transport is equal to $13.50, and she saved, okay, $1.80. So how much is food? It's basically no, not 50, 30. Okay, so always double check your answer. So 30 minus 13.50 minus 1.80. Okay, not 0.8, minus 1.80. Okay, so let me put this as 30 minus 13.5. This should be 16.50. Okay, over here, minus 1.8. Okay, 0 is equal to dollars 14.70. Okay, so that's the answer. How much is spend on food? $14.70. Okay, reasonable. All right, reasonable amount. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, question 14. Ken bought 5 kg of sugar. He used 0.32 of sugar to make a cake and packed the remaining sugar equally into 6 packets. What was the mass of each packet? Okay, so total of sugar, let me just zoom this in. Total is equal to 5 kg. Then he used 0.32, right? So the packed sugar is equal to, this is 0.32 kg. So let's have 5 minus 0.32, and this will give us 4.68 kg. Okay, and now we want to divide it by 6. So what's the each packet? So I would say 6 packets of sugar is 4.68 kg. Then let's have 1. So 1, okay, oops, whoa, 1 packet of sugar, okay, is equal to 4.68 divide, right? Oops, divide by 6, right? So if you were to calculate it correctly, it should be 0.78 kg. Okay, so for each packet, the answer should be 0.78 kg. So you're gonna write it down. Okay, 0.78 kg in this case over here. Right, so make sure you write down your workings, double check your workings as well. Okay, very, very important. All right, let's move on to the next and last question. Question 15. Okay, so bag A contains 26.5 kg more peanuts than bag B. After 4.5 kg of peanuts were removed from bag B and placed into bag A, the mass of the bag A was 5 times the mass of bag B. What was the mass of peanuts at bag B at first? Okay, so what we can do is let's do model drawing, right? Okay, so we have bag A and then we have bag B, right? So bag A contains more than bag B. So let's have bag A to be very, very big. And then, okay, then bag B over here, right? Something like this. Okay, pretty straightforward. All right, and how much more did bag A have? 26.5. So we're gonna put an arrow over here to say this is 26.5. Okay, in this case over here. So we have done with, let's see, oh, not hand, but we have done with the first part, which is this, right? Bag A contains bag B. Okay, so now the next one is after 4.5 kgs were removed from bag B and place it into bag A, the mass of the bag was 5 times more. Okay, so what we can do is we can go over here and then let me add a rectangle, which is basically this is 4.55. Okay, so I'm gonna make this a bit bigger so that it's easier to see as well, like this. Whoa, that's big. And then like this as well, right? So in a way, this has been removed. 2.65. Let me just put it like this. Okay, so 4.5. Can I make it smaller? Yes, I can. All right, 4.5 kg has been removed and added. So this is over here. Oh, sorry. This is over here. So 4.5 has been removed from bag B. So we remove this and we added this into what do you call this? Into bag A, like this, right? So I'm gonna put add like this, and then let me add an arrow from bag 4.5 to this as well, right? So mm, no, like this. Okay, so 4.5 we added like this, right? So it looks something like this, and then bag A has 5 times more as bag B. So what this means is, let me just put a line over here saying that over here this is, oops, not a line but an arrow. Okay, the arrow, I don't want it to be joined like that. So essentially is 5 units and this is 1 unit, right? So we have 5 units for the whole thing and this is 1 unit. Okay, so a bit hopefully this gives you a better idea on how this looks like. All right, but in this case, can we solve this? So if your answer is yes, great. If your answer is no, then let's go through it. Okay, so I'm gonna make this a bit more space, right? So in this case, if this 5 units is over here, okay, whoops. So I'm not gonna put this anymore, right? Because we already know this. So 5 unit essentially is a combination. Okay, so not 5 units, but 5 units is whole thing. But if you were to look closely, if you minus 1 unit, right, we can actually get 4 units. And these 4 units essentially is 2.65 plus 4.55 plus 4.55, right? In this case, right? Because this is more, right? Yeah. So 4 units are essentially this whole thing over here. Okay. Right. Because we have 4.55 also over here. So that means what we can do is 4 units is equal to 4.55 plus 4.55 plus 26.5. Okay, and this is equal to 35.60 kg, right? Now 1 unit is equal to 35.6, right? And then we divide it by 4. Okay, and this will give us 8.90 kg. Oops. All right, now the question is, in this case over here, what was the mass of peanuts in bag B? So we know 1 unit. Now we just need to add 5.55 in this case. All right, so what we need to do is to have oops. Okay, so this will be bag B at first is equal to 1 unit plus 4.55, which is equal to 8.9, oops, zero point 0.9 plus 4.55, which is equal to 13.45 kg in this case over here. All right, and that's the answer to this question. Therefore, you put here 13.45 kg. And that's about it. That is what we go through for Methodist Girls School Primary 4 with Assessment 3 2024. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want more of this kind of videos, subscribe down below and comment down what are things you want me to go through next. See you in the next one. Bye bye.